Jessica Frost-Ballas here with the next installment of the Interactive Cards by Jess series for Simon Says Stamp. Today I'm using a new to me technique to create a wiper card. When you pull the sides of the card, the hearts pop up above the otter's head. So let's get started. First, I die cut the big picture book otter using craft, black, and vanilla malt cardstock. Then I used a sponge dauber to apply tea-dye Distress Oxide ink to the sides and bottom of the otter's snout and belly. Next, I apply walnut stained Distress Oxide ink to the sides of the otter's body and his ears. I also use a piece of scrap paper to mask off his belly so that I can apply a little ink to the undersides of his arms. I also add just a touch of worn lipstick Distress Oxide ink to his ears. I also die cut a tail for the otter and add some blending, but as you'll see later, I end up leaving it off. Next, I create the background of my card by blending dried marigold, abandoned coral, and picked raspberry Distress Oxide inks onto a piece of Strathmore Bristol cardstock. I blend them together to create a bright and cheerful sunrise. Once I'm finished blending, I spritz the panel with shimmer spray and blot off the excess water. Then I blend Blueprint Sketch and Chipped Sapphire Distress Oxide ink onto another piece of Strathmore Bristol cardstock. I spritz them with the same shimmer spray, blot off the excess, and set them aside to dry. While my blended panels are drying, I create the rest of my card base. First, I cut two white cardstock panels to 4 1/4 by 8 1/2. I score each panel at 1 1/2 and 3 inches. Then I fold the card at the 3-inch score line and then fold it in the opposite direction at the 1 1/2-inch score line. I use a bone folder to make sure I'm getting good creases. I repeat the process for the second panel. Once both panels are scored and folded, you can get an idea of how the card will fit together. Next, I cut a cardstock tab to 1 1/2 by 3 inches. I place it in my scoreboard and mark the 1 1/2 point along the 3-inch side. Next, I place the corner of the panel at the 1 1/2 mark on my scoreboard and line up the midway point I had marked with the pencil to the 1 1/2 mark as well, and then score the piece on a diagonal. If this is confusing, you could also trace a line midway down the long side of the panel, use a ruler to draw a line connecting the edge of the midway to the corner, and then score it. This just eliminates that extra step for me. I erase the pencil marks and then fold and crease the diagonal score line. Next, I apply score tape to the bottom triangle of that tab. Be careful not to let the score tape get on the rest of the cardstock tab. I trim off the excess and then burnish the score tape into the cardstock with my bone folder. Then I adhere the cardstock tab to the middle scored area of one panel, and when you pull the card apart, the tab you just adhered pops up. Now that my distress oxides have dried, I trim the sunrise panel down to 4 by 5 1/4 and place it in my MISTI. I stamp a sentiment from Avery Elle's and then, with Versamark, and heat emboss it with white embossing powder. Next, I die cut the blue panel with the Simon Says Stamp Drifting Stitches border dies to create ocean waves. Then I adhered the sunrise panel to the white card base that does not have the attached tab. I adhere the darker wave to the background before building my otter. I use a mix of regular adhesive and liquid adhesive to adhere my otter together. Then I adhere my light wave over the top to create the look of the otter bobbing in the water. You'll also see that this is where I considered adding a tail and then changed my mind. Next, I blend the same 3 colors of Distress Oxide ink onto white cardstock and spritz it with shimmer spray. I blot off the excess, let it dry, and then die cut it with the Lawn Fawn hearts and one of the larger Hero Arts Infinity Nesting Heart dies. I arrange the hearts over the pop-up tab and adhere them to the tab. I made sure that the hearts would fit inside the card, and then I trimmed off any part of the white tab that was showing from behind the hearts. I applied score tape to the outside scored edge of the pull tab panel and then adhered it to my otter panel. I burnished it really well with my bone folder to make sure everything stuck together smoothly. Then I applied score tape to the outside scored edge of the otter panel and adhered that to the other side of the pull tab panel. Some people adhere both sides at the same time, but I like doing one at a time for a little more control. I add a few finishing touches with a white gel pen and Nuvo Crystal Glaze, and then test my card. The more you play with it, the easier it folds back inside. You could also build a scene or write a message on the white flap on the left side of the card when it's popped up or on the back of the card. And that's it. I hope this inspires you to give wiper cards a try. There are endless variations on this design. You could orient the card so that the pop-up happens on the sides, or install double wipers on the top and bottom. I'd love to know if you've tried this technique before. I really had fun with it. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll be back next month with a new interactive card. Have a wonderful day, and until next time, happy crafting. Bye!